So Donald Trump's been promising mass deportations for a while. He's had his border czar Tom Homan saying that don't worry, we're not going to be separating families, the children can go too. And this has led to exactly what everybody was expecting, which was there would be a mass media scramble to try and present any argument possible to say that mass deportations of illegal immigrants who shouldn't be in the country in the first place would be an utterly horrifying and terrible thing. And it has been real scattershot with this. So I thought I'd go through a little bit of that and then also talk about some of Trump's recent statements on immigration and try and warn against what he is maybe suggesting, because I think there's been some walking back of some of the statements that he's made, and I think that you need to hold him accountable and say that, no, people need to go. If you've said these things, people need to go. You don't want a repeat of the 1986 Ronald Reagan Immigration Act that granted amnesty for millions of people that only encouraged more people to come through. So I'm going to be somewhat critical, but it's for the sake of trying to push America in the right direction when it comes to immigration, because it can have horrifying effects for any country. Trust me, I would know. I'm British. But first, what are the arguments that are being presented for why you shouldn't deport people who should never have been allowed entry into the country in the first place? Well, obviously, the first one that you've got to address is the one that everybody knows is going to come up, which is the line go up argument, which is that if you do mass deportations, line go down.
Did they attach a number to the cost of this? Because I remember when Homan was being interviewed by 60 Minutes, she said something like $80 billion drop in the US economy. Bear in mind, illegal immigration cost Americans $150 billion in 2023, so that's nearly double.
These numbers don't matter because the numbers can't both exist at the same time, so therefore if one's a cost and if both are a cost, then the one that's more beneficial for Democrat policies is the one you care about.
Oh, I do forget as well, of course, GDP takes into account government spending, so that means that it's going to drop because the government's going to be stealing less of Americans' money to then redistribute to third world criminals.
And the drop of that would be approximately 7.4% in the GDP, according to, drumroll please, the Democrats in the Congressional Joint Economic Committee non-profit organization.
Right, so bastions of fiscal restraint. Did they happen to come up with the GDP per capita number, which is what actually matters, which means American would be per head richer?
No, it's not mentioned in this article.
Fascinating, that, isn't it?
It's not mentioned in this article, although they do say that the US economy wouldn't grow at all. There would be severe economic fallout, and they also say that it would shrink the labor force, obviously, because agriculture and construction in particular are far, far too dependent on illegal workers in the country, and they might actually have to bump up wages or streamline their productive processes through automation if they wanted to offset that labor cost. It cost US-born workers their jobs, because apparently, they wouldn't. They would just get rid of all of these workers and then just go, well, we just can't hire anybody now. If they're not illegal, then what's the point of hiring them? And sadly, I do think that is an attitude that a lot of business owners have, because I have seen a number of clips that were presented in the mainstream media leading up to the election, trying to dissuade people from voting for Trump, because some business owner, like a local business owner, who should actually care about his community and providing jobs for the local community, is like, well, I've hired a few illegals, and they work so much harder, and they don't ask for anywhere near as much money. They basically are my slaves.
You should, anyone who is listening, go follow the work of Nate Hockman, America 2100. He's the chap who went down to Charleroi, the local town where loads of Haitians had been dropped off after Trump mentioned it at the debate, and he found that there was a local plant where pretty much everyone had been laid off so that the entire plant could be rehired with a bunch of cheap illegal work. So they're purposefully sacking Americans to hire slave labor, and they're using the government's, Biden administration's strange policies about allowing these refugees, economic migrants crossing the southern border, indefinitely entitled to being able to remain in America. They're just using that to get around actually paying people a living wage.
And the centre-left and some of the centre-right are perfectly okay with this because
line go up.
And ironically enough, it was Bernie Sanders who came out and said, actually, this is bad for American workers. So, stop clocks and all that. And they also warned that it will risk igniting inflation, because the Democrats really care about that. See, when we talk about how government spending adds to GDP, do you understand how much the GOP cost the American people in GDP gains when they didn't allow for, what was it, the $2.5 trillion to be spent in the Inflation Reduction Act?
Which then increased inflation.
It would,
and also...
Details don't matter.
Hang on, does So the Democrats now care about all of the money printing and the suspension of usual business that happened during COVID lockdowns.
They pretend to when it's not going to be their government.
Tactical libertarianism, I forgot.
There it is. So, okay, but this doesn't put me off because obviously all of these arguments are rubbish. So what's the next one? Well, if you don't care about your own country's economy, don't you care about Mexico's?
No.
Don't you care about Mexico's art? This article, in fact, from the Washington Post is incredible because listen to how much they just let slip for free, which destroys any sort of argument that, well, these people are a net economic benefit because they come, they earn money, and then they spend money in the local communities that they integrate to. Because this says the exact opposite, because it's pointing out that this Mexican village depends on remittances from relatives in the United States. And again, they're not hiding it. This was like a holy S moment reading this article because, I mean, listen, it talks about this village, focusing on this guy called Chavez, who was warning the town that Trump is coming with full force. He looked around at the men he'd grown up with, suntanned workers in baseball caps who'd returned from the United States for the holidays because they've integrated so well and care about their new country. Many were now legal US residents. What a great idea that was. But their neighbors and cousins weren't. What will we do, he asked. How will we react as a community? Mexico, it says, is now the world's number 2 recipient of remittances, right behind India.
I was about to say India. Do you know how much India gets a year?
Billions.
$180 billion. That is larger than the GDP of Kenya.
Yep. But they're only there so that they can increase the economy of America, obviously.
It's just vampiric.
Yeah, it carries on. Trump often depicts immigrants who enter the United States illegally as criminals. I mean, if they're doing it illegally, they, by definition, are. In Mexico, the view is decidedly different. Who'd have guessed that, right? True heroes who love their country, said President Claudia Sheinbaum on a Twitter post in November, celebrating yet another record year of remittances.
Isn't she a demented socialist?
Obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously. But again, they celebrate America as a place that they can basically go scrounge a load of money and send it back home. They're using you as they're leeching off of you. That's literally what they're celebrating
have
here.
you not considered that they love American values and
They
revere
don't.
the Constitution and
Clearly they don't.
but high-skilled labour and
No.
there is American the
Low-skilled agricultural workers.
H1B.
Don't get me started on the bloody H1Bs. Chavez, 62, is an example of the crucial role migration has played in social mobility. He grew up in Francisco Villa in a 2-bedroom house with a leaky roof, sharing a bed with 5 siblings. He put himself through college in Morelia, the state capital, but it became clear he was the only one. There was only one real road to get ahead. At 26, he slipped over the border and started picking blackberries and strawberries in California. So he's a criminal.
He slipped over. He broke into the country.
He broke into the country. Today, he's a US citizen. Why? How? Sorry, why? With a landscaping business in the Chicago suburbs that employs 14, including his 3 US-born sons. And thanks to birthright citizenship, they are American citizens.
Trump's going to end that, thankfully.
Yes, hopefully, yes. When he comes back to Francisco Villa, it's to a house with 8 bedrooms, a spiral staircase, and a fireplace with a framed picture of the Virgin of Guadalupe. So this guy breaks into your country,
has the house that I want to live in.
Yeah, leeches, gets given citizenship somehow, and then not for the sake of America, not for the sake of the American economy line going up, so for the sake of being able to have an 8-bedroom spiral staircase house in his hometown back in Mexico. That's incredible. And they say this like you're supposed to feel bad for him. Like, oh no, all of the illegals aren't going to be able to leech off of you. And no, good. And then they carry on. On a national level, the pipeline of migrant money has become a gusher. Mexico took in about $63 billion in remittances in 2023. Central America itself receives less migrant cash, but is even more reliant on it. In Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, remittances accounted for between 20 and 30% of national income in 2023, according to the Inter-American Development Bank. Unlike Mexico, a major manufacturing country, they don't have an alternative economic growth strategy, said Manuel Orozco, director of the Migrations and Remittances Program at that particular think tank.
Brilliant. What that is, fantastic. I'm glad they don't have an alternative economic strategy. So what we can do is we just ban remittances. Mm-hmm. So that means that they have to stop the entire fraud scheme. It just ends. Brilliant. Thank you for pointing out the easy policy fix to this.
I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that the Washington Post is trying to sell you. Won't you feel bad for the people who are coming in, taking advantage of your country, stealing jobs from hardworking Americans, depressing wages, not so that they can spend it on local businesses and help out the local economy. No, so they can send it home.
To a mansion.
To a mansion. To an actual 8-bedroom spiral staircase mansion. Good God. But that's one article. I'm not convinced. Well, Honduras says that they're going to end military cooperation with the US if they do mass deportations.
Okay,
don't care.
Well, okay, wow. Okay, the Honduran military is really going to beat the US military, is it? Good luck.
Well, they're going to end the cooperation.
Yeah, okay. But put it this way.
They're
no longer going to cooperate, right? So all military cooperation is backed up by the idea of force, specifically superior force. Mm-hmm. If the Americans wanted them to cooperate, they just forced them.
Well, yeah, they are the world hegemon at the moment.
So good luck.
There's not much that you could do about that. So, maybe people reading the AP are going to go, oh no, our incredibly profitable Honduras agreements. This is not going to work. But then you get to the ones that are going to be really, really emotionally manipulative, which are the ones of, what if they show up at school? Because what I've been expecting and what a lot of people have been expecting is if Trump goes ahead with this, the first thing you're going to get from the New York Times and the Washington Post, all the liberal newspapers, are going to be pictures of small children being dragged out of their homes crying.
Exactly like the Syrian kid who was face down, so to speak.
You're not going to get the criminals being dragged out of apartment blocks that they've taken over. You're not going to get the cartel being kicked out or just general gangs being kicked out. No, you're going to get small child cries, abandon all borders. That's the argument that they're going to make. And they say about this, and again, this is another one of those articles, they're trying to make you feel bad, they're trying to manipulate your emotions, but just read the actual facts that they are presenting here and ask yourself, is this good for the nation? That the school system in America is so broken that they have a ridiculous number of illegal students in the school system, most of whom can't speak English, that cause chaos in the schools. Not even necessarily because they're badly behaved, more because of the fact that you can't teach these students. Most of them haven't gone to school before, most of them can't speak English, so it costs more time, and ultimately is pointless. Ultimately, all of this is pointless. So they say, across the country, educators describe widespread anxiety about Donald J. Trump's promises to deport immigrants and what it could mean for their students. If immigration agents arrive on the doorstep of a New York City public school, principals have been told what to do. Ask the officers to wait outside and call a school district lawyer. School system in New York has enrolled about 40,000 recent immigrant students since 2022. 40,000. Now, as Trump prepares to take office with promises to deport millions of them, the district has shared with the school staff a protocol to try to shield them, those who have tenuous legal status. In a December letter to principals, Emma Vedhera, the district's chief operating officer, wrote, "We hope using this protocol will never be necessary. For educators concerned about their students being deported, the city has directed them to an online information session hosted by Project Rousseau." Excellent name there, Project Rousseau, a non-profit that provides legal services to immigrants. So they already have plans in place and an enormous network of people to try to make sure if you have illegal students in your school that nothing can be done about it.
I feel like coining Connor's law, where if you go looking for it, you will find the blank slate.
Literally called themselves Project Rousseau. I read that and I was like, oh, come on. Am I being pranked here? Am I being schooled? No. Public schools serving clusters of migrant children have already dealt with a dizzying set of challenges in recent years, as an influx of hundreds of thousands of migrants cross the southern border. Some are educating students who speak indigenous languages, not foreign languages now, indigenous languages.
Indigenous to what?
Foreign countries.
But hang on.
Foreign languages.
Hang on. Spanish is not indigenous to the Americas. Are they serious?
It basically means non-white language.
Yeah,
if it's not English, then it's indigenous.
The WASPs and Black Americans are a founding stock to the American project, therefore they're the indigenous ones. So, cry about it.
No, you can't have a nation.
Yeah.
You can't have a nation.
Sorry, there is a child crying.
Sorry.
Borders are racist.
The Germans were mean in the mid-century, so you're not allowed a nation anymore.
Fair point. Well
Yeah.
made.
But they have never before been enrolled in formal education, a lot of these students. Others are trying to prod teenagers to class when they may face intense pressure to earn money, and many have assisted newly arrived families with finding shelter, food, and winter clothes. In Chicago, they've enrolled as many as 17,000 recent immigrant students. Issues related to the influx have become a factor in the ongoing contract negotiations between the teachers' union and the public school system. Why would you want any of this? Why would you want to protect any of this? This system is broken.
I heard something in there that they just hid. Prod children to attend school who would otherwise be facing severe pressure to earn money.
Yeah.
So the parents have brought them into the country illegally to act as child slave labour? Am I hearing that right?
That could be what is taken from that sentence, yes.
And the American government are just happy with this, are they?
The Biden certainly was.
Makes sense.
You're supposed to... you're not racist, are you, Connor?
No, fair point. No.
Okay, good.
To the mines they go.
Yeah. And the district, it says as well, in Chicago, struggling to maintain staffing amid a budget deficit. So 17,000 new students, most of whom who can't speak English. I mean, that's obviously going to help. But because of the many needs of recent immigrant students, they need more investments for smaller class sizes and more bilingual teaching assistants and social workers, according to Rebecca Martinez, a campaign director for the Chicago's Teachers Union.
Oh, so of course, teachers' unions who are incredibly corrupt, keep strong-arming larger budgets to the public school sector despite worsening outcomes of courses.
Yeah. Obviously, the teachers' union solution is not, well, we need to solve this problem. It's we need more money. We need more money. I need to be paid more for this. And to be fair, if you're an honest teacher actually trying to teach people because you have a passion for educating children, then yeah, if you were put into this situation outside of your own control and didn't want it to be that, maybe you should get paid a bit more. But if you're part of if you're part of a teachers' union that are encouraging this, then screw you. Ultimately, screw you. And the last one of these manipulative articles was another New York Times one, where it's saying the alienation of Jamie Kachwa, a man whose father-in-law was a MAGA Republican who voted and now is worrying about maybe being deported.
How long has he been in the country?
A good few years. He's 33 and hasn't seen his own father since he was 10 months old when he left Mexico in a car seat bound for the United States. So what he is he's a dreamer. He's a DACA kid.
Right. Well, so he's had 20 odd years to apply for citizenship. Not saying that he...
No, potentially 33 years. I mean, obviously, other people could have done that on behalf of him when he was younger, but still. Carry on.
So he hasn't, and now his father-in-law, who wanted cheaper groceries and the rule of law,
and didn't want his country overrun by cartel members,
is to blame for his moral failings, is it? Just getting this right from the new... Right, okay.
Well, you can feel sad for these kinds of people.
I actually don't.
But of course, he has right now a temporary work permit because of the DACA Act, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, which protects some immigrants who arrived in the country as children from being deported. And again, this guy, he doesn't seem like a bad guy.
Yeah, sure. Why didn't he seek legal citizenship?
I don't know. He works for, I think he runs a local business. He's married to an American woman. They've got children together. So this is going to be the prime candidate for when mass deportations start happening. If people like this guy end up getting caught in the net, this is the guy that you're going to hear about more than anything, because I don't know if it mentions in here either if he's sending any remittances back home. So this is the most sympathetic example that you can find in something like this, because to be fair, yeah, DACA, he didn't know what was going on when he was 10 months old. He was brought into the country. He had no agency over any of this. But the thing is, with DACA, Trump's actually not really looking to deport any of them, which is something that I think ultimately might be a mistake, because mass amnesty being granted is always something that causes problems.
Reverse incentive to
it just incentivizes more people to bring their kids over with the knowledge that even if they get me, I can use my kids as an anchor. because if they get DACA, if they get anything else like that, then I'll be able to just latch on to them.
And they can sponsor me to come in for a visa.
Exactly. So I just took this video that came out, if I just double check here, 4 weeks ago, where he was saying that DACA recipients, he wants them to be able to remain in the US, and I highlighted a few of the clips from this, two of them that I thought were the most important. One was his remarks on the DACA themselves, two was his remarks on his approach to legal immigration when his new administration comes in, both of which I have issues with, both of which I think people should be wary of and try to encourage Trump to take an opposite approach here. Right. So here's the clip I'll just play here.
What about dreamers, sir? Dreamers who were brought to this country illegally as children. You said once back in 2017, they, quote, shouldn't be very worried about being deported. Should they be worried now?
The dreamers are going to come later, and we have to do something about the dreamers, because these are people that have been brought here at a very young age, and many of these are middle-aged people now. They don't even speak the language of their country. And yes, we're going to do something about the dreamers.
What does that mean?
And
what are you going to do?
I will work with the Democrats on a plan, and if we can come up with a plan, but the Democrats have made it very, very difficult to do anything. Republicans are very open to the dreamers. The dreamers, we're talking many years ago, they were brought into this country, many years ago. Some of them are no longer young people, and in many cases, they become successful. They have great jobs. In some cases, they have small businesses. Some cases, they might have large businesses. And we're going to have to do something with them. And
you want them to be able to stay. That's what you're saying?
I do. Okay. I want to be able to work something out. People that have been treated very unfairly are the people that have been online for 10 years to come into the country. And we're going to make it very easy for people to come in terms of they have to pass the test. They have to be able to tell you what the Statue of Liberty is. They have to tell you a little bit about our country. They have to love our country.
So the two things that concern me there is the potential for a mass amnesty for these people, because especially if you're working with the Democrats are not going to want it to stop at the DACA.
Well, because they're beholden to anti-white ethnic lobbying groups who help fund a lot of their elections, and they have a perverse incentive, as John Fetterman himself said on Joe Rogan, to provide amnesty to all of the illegals so they can create a clientele constituency block that shores up states to be permanently blue like California.
Yeah, and Chuck Schumer himself, I've got it up here and not on the links, but Chuck Schumer has said himself that he wants to help the DACAs get legal citizenship, but then went on to say as well, open up a path to citizenship for all 11 million, or however many undocumented there are, in the United States at the moment. So if you decide to take this route with the Democrats, it won't stop at the, if I get the figures up here, I think here the amount eligible for DACA in the US right now is a little over 1,160,000. And that includes the people who are currently taking DACA recipients as well right now. So it wouldn't just stop there. You'd have 10 million plus on top of that to deal with. And again, all that means is that, one, you potentially open up pathways for these people to keep getting citizenship if they keep coming in, if you're working with the Democrats, and two, either way, it presents an incentive for more people to keep flooding through the border. The best and the second thing there with regards to legal immigration is part of the point of MAGA, as far as I could tell back in 2016, was to shut down the border somewhat to make sure that you protect American jobs from being offshored the way that they had been, so that you can basically stick up for the white working class that have been abandoned by the American establishment. If you turn around now and say we're going to make it easier than ever for huge numbers of people who are skilled, and there are many myths to do with so-called skilled immigrants coming into the US, particularly on H-1Bs, then what you're essentially doing is betraying the promise that you made to your constituents. My best effort to try and turn this into a positive is that Trump himself has been incredibly contradictory over the years on most of the things that he has said regarding immigration. For instance, somebody like Patrick Casey was pointing out that back in 2016, before he was elected, he was saying similar things regarding legal immigration, still brought the overall numbers down throughout his term. And regarding the Dreamers, he's been really contradictory.
Can I put two things in there?
Yeah, of course.
Stephen Miller is in charge of border control, as well as Tom Homan. who helped set immigration policy in the first Trump administration. He was the one that basically brought H-1B to a halt as of 2020. So Stephen Miller is setting the agenda, so we have reason to have some confidence despite Trump sounding squishy. He might be talking soft and walking hard, if that makes sense. And then the other thing that I wanted to pick up on, I'll go one step further than the economics, which I know you'll agree with, because as Eric Kaufman often writes in White Shift, economic concerns often are a way of coaching in acceptable parlance cultural concerns about immigration in a way that won't get you called racist. So yes, we can talk about economics, but a lot of the reason MAGA voted for Trump, both last time and in 2020 and in 2024, is because they didn't want to see their country subjected to a transient population churn, because they don't see their country as an economic zone or a sports team or a corporation. They see it as a home. And so if your home has the inability to lock the door or has a large volume of strangers moving in and out, rearranging the furniture, and the homeowners cannot evict those unwelcome house guests, then is it really their home anymore? And if Trump thinks that being an American, as Vivek Ramaswamy did by trying to apply citizenship tests for voting, is just reciting the poem on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty, itself a representative of the positives of mass immigration from Ellis Island, then that's
also not something that was part of the US Constitution, came 100 years after, and was a Eastern European immigrant advocating for more Eastern Europeans to come into the country.
Quite. You can be an American who has traced their lineage back to the Mayflower, the Pilgrims who first put their feet on Plymouth Rock.
There are still plenty of them.
Yes, and not know the inscription written on the plinth of the Statue of Liberty, and you are far more American than someone living in Honduras who can recite all of the articles of the Constitution by memory, because it is simply the fact that America is not a set of ideals, as J.D. Vance said. It is a people with a history and a heritage and a distinct lineage, and those people should have a say over who is allowed into their home.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because I do worry somewhat with people like this AI policy advisor Sriram, who is basically an Indian advocate wanting more Indians to come into the nation, alongside Ramaswamy, who's been very, very in favour of H-1B, and then Musk as well a few weeks ago with his H-1B meltdown thing. I worry, but at the same time with what you're saying about Stephen Miller, and then he's got Vance as well by his side, I'm hoping that this all turns out to be talk, because again, he's been very contradictory. To go through a little bit of this article, during his first presidency, he tried to destroy DACA and was only stopped by the Supreme Court. And he said he was going to unwind it. He said his duty was to protect the American people and the Constitution. At the same time, I don't want to punish children, but we must recognize that we're a nation of opportunity because we're a nation of laws, so we need to stick by our laws. Then he turns around and says, Congress, get ready to do your job. DACA, and then later on he tweeted saying that there's going to be no deal for DACA, anything like that. So he's very, very contradictory with this. So I'm hoping that this again just turns into another one of his many contradictory statements, because I mentioned Chuck Schumer. Guess who popped his head up after Trump said these things? Was Chuck Schumer saying that we'd love to do that.
Of course you
And
would.
the general rule that I stick by is that if it makes Chuck Schumer happy, it should make you worried. And I think that's fair. Because again, if we go back to the 1980s, Ronald Reagan had his Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, which offered mass amnesty to approximately 2.7 million people, got permanent residence in the US, who were undocumented illegal immigrants into the country, and at the same time had a promise of stronger borders. Guess which part of that didn't happen? So we don't want a repeat of this, and we want Trump to be able to hold himself up to his word that he is going to make stronger borders, improve the American economy, without swamping the foundational Americans who are the ones who bought it who built it in the first place.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.